Good Tuesday afternoon to you. It's 4 o'clock in time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Relative to the Browns radio analyst Nathan Zagura on which new offensive lineman he's most excited to see with the Browns. This from 92.3 The Fan.
I think it's just a combination of all of them because the Browns needed to get new starters on the offensive line, a complete overhaul. And so you bring in Titus Howard, who's been a very, very good pass blocker throughout his career. A guy that I talked to this week who said, he's going to come in and be the right tackle for the Cleveland Browns. You bring in Zion Johnson, who former first-round pick, much like Titus Howard, a former first-round pick, who maybe hasn't reached his full ceiling yet in his time with the Chargers, but the Browns have George Warhop here, and one of the things that George Warhop is known for is getting the best out of young offensive linemen, and Zion Johnson has been a very good run blocker in his time here in the National Football League. He will play one of the guard positions. Elton Jenkins can play guard or center. I think you look at his career, he's probably been better as a guard moving to center last year, really for the first time in his career. About 80 to 80+% of the snaps he's ever played in the NFL have been at guard, even some a little bit at tackle, but was a two-time Pro Bowler at guard there for the Green Bay Packers. And now an opportunity gives you some guard center flexibility there. Luke Whippler is somebody that the Browns are still high on internally. So maybe he could be the center. Jenkins could be at one guard. And then Tevin Jenkins, you bring back, if you look at it this way, you could say right now we could roll out there with four starters. If you had Tevin Jenkins at one guard, Zion Johnson at the other, Elton Jenkins at center, and Titus Howard at right tackle. Whippler and DeJuan Jones coming back from injuries, obviously, for the Browns, and I don't think they're done there.
The important thing is, how is Warhop going to use these guys? What's he going to ask them to do? If you're a first-round pick in the NFL, you can do some really good things. The question is, do you put players in a position to be successful? We'll see. Daryl Ryder, Browns beat reporter for 92.3 The Fan, on the Browns and what he thinks will go on in the 2026 draft.
If the better player at 6 is the receiver, then you take the receiver, in my view, because you need the talent. If the better player happens to be the left tackle at 6, then you do that. But then there's, we've had the conversation about, could they go defense at 6 if that's the best player available? The good news for Andrew Berry is I think he has tremendous flexibility in the draft. It feels like he's painted into a corner because of the needs, but I don't think he's painted into a corner. He has 5 of the top 110 picks in this draft. Last year he was in a similar position. He nailed his picks, right? He got 4 starters out of that. And then we'll, see what happens with, Shedeur Sanders, but he got 4 starters out of last year's draft, which is tremendous. And if he can duplicate that, and obviously that's asking a lot, but if you can get 3 starters out of those 5 picks, you've done really, really well for yourself.
Yeah, they definitely need probably 3 starters out of those top 110 picks. Maybe they find one of those diamonds in later in the draft or as an undrafted free agent. You need to find some young starters. Again, Nathan Zagura, Browns radio analyst, trying to answer the question, do you think the Browns will take a quarterback in this draft?
Until you have the solution, you don't. So you should always be searching for it. I think right now with the Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders competition to be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, I do think could Ty Simpson be somebody that really intrigues them that they think is, a real likely answer? Possibly. Would I be surprised if he was taken in the first round in this draft by the Cleveland Browns? Yes, I would, but that doesn't mean it could not happen. What I think is more likely is that a guy like Drew Aller, whom the Browns were very, very high on, and in fact, I think had Drew Aller come out last year, maybe played a better game against Notre Dame, comes out, I think there's a good chance that Drew Aller's a Cleveland Brown. So he's somebody that now they would look at a year later and say, okay, yeah, he had that injury. There are a lot of things at Penn State that went on. Perhaps those offensive, the system that they had there, maybe it's not all his fault, but we like that ball of clay. Plus he would, obviously the hometown stuff doesn't matter at all in reality, but it's somebody who understands this franchise, understands this organization. But I could see them taking a flyer on Drew Aller in the 3rd or the 4th round and saying, okay, here's another guy that we really liked. We were very high on a year ago that maybe has the tools, he has the size, he has the arm, he has all of it to become the answer for us at quarterback.
And if the Browns really did like Aller, that's kind of Andrew Berry's MO, is when he likes a guy, likes a guy. Try to get Jerry Jeudy the year before they traded for him. There are a number of instances with that. So if Aller's sitting there third or fourth round, that's got to keep an ear out for relative to the Browns. Mary Kay Cabot, Jared Mueller will be along to talk plenty of Browns coming up in just a minute. But some news regarding the Guardians. Guardians under 2 weeks away from opening day, and Jose Ramirez left the game over the weekend with a jammed shoulder, missed last night. Still not sure when he will be back in the lineup. Stephen Vogt gave an update on how the Guardians will proceed with Ramirez.
Jose came out of the game, some shoulder soreness, tightness, and but he's feeling much, much better today. So we're going to reassess him day by day. He should be just fine in a few days.
Did they MRI or do anything like that?
Just testing it and seeing how he felt come in today with the improvement. Don't plan on right now doing that.
When that happens, what are the conversations like when he comes off the field with you? Brings that up.
Get Carter, keep him to the plate as soon as fast as possible. No, I mean, when things happen in game, I don't give them much thought. My job's to next man up, go finish the game, and then wait for the people who went to school for that kind of stuff to tell me what's going on. But he was evaluated post game, and the big factor was going to be how does he feel coming in today, and he felt much better.
Yeah, they need to take it slow the remainder of spring training with Jose Ramirez. To state the unstated, they can't afford to lose that guy for any length of time at all. Time for us to take a quick timeout. Mary Kay Cabot up on the other side of the break. We're talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
You got so much to do. It's got you feeling blue. Put a little play in your day. 'Cause it's fun all over the state. So come on. Great games wait for you and me. The Ohio Lottery. Put a little play in your day. Put a little play in your day.
Browns are up first on Sports4CLE. Former NFL defensive back Titus Powell with his thoughts on what Andrew Berry has done to the Browns roster so far this offseason.
He went into this offseason knowing that he had to fix the offensive line. I think that, his motivation was what Chicago did. I always referred to the Denver Broncos as being a team that don't have a lot of elite playmakers on the outside, doesn't have the elite running back, but yet they went that far into the playoffs. They had that successful of a season, and it's because their offensive line, according to PFF, was the best in the NFL. So I think that people are starting to realize how important that offensive line is. Obviously, if you got the top five quarterback, they can overcome some of those things. But if you don't, and you got a young guy, you got to make sure that you're protecting that guy. And the best way to do that is to make sure you fix that offensive line. So I love the fact that they did that. Losing Devin Bush was probably the thing that I don't think any Browns fan wanted to do. But when you replace him with a guy like Quincy Williams and you listen to him talk and you understand that he played his best ball when Coach Rudy was his linebacker coach with the Jets, it excites you. It makes you think that, put him and Carson Schwarzenegger together. If Carson Schwarzenegger continue to progress and take the next step, which, this guy who won Defensive Rookie of the Year, he continues to go. Next thing we're looking for out of him is an all-pro type season, and I think he's totally capable of that.
Let's welcome in Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Mary Kay, we'll talk about the linebackers in a minute. Let's talk about the offensive line. I know you wrote an article relative to Andrew Berry's work on it. Take us through your thoughts, just when you look at what he's done to the line so far.
Well, they really had to throw some bodies at it. They had to throw some money at it. They had to come away with some starters, which is not an easy thing to do. There just aren't a lot of good tackles floating around out there that teams don't want. So to be able to land a starting right tackle and then a couple of potential starting right guards and possibly a new center, I think so far he's done a really, really nice job with it. And of course, it all has to come together. But just in talking to these guys on Zooms so far and reading up on them and studying up on them a little bit, it really seems like it couldn't have gone much better.
Yeah, fans look at it and you see the PFF grade, the PFF grade's the PFF grade. It's not an end-all, be-all. It's kind of somebody looking at tape. They're not exactly sure of what the exact team wants you to do. So I wouldn't get too caught up in it. It seems like there's a lot of versatility, and the important thing that I think people overlook. Offensive line, more than any other thing on the football field, those 5 guys got to work together, and for that to happen, they got to be on the field together.
Yes, they really do, and there are some extenuating circumstances here as well. Is DeJuan Jones going to be able to come back healthy? Is Luke Whippler going to be your center? Will they re-sign Ethan Posick? Or will they move Elton Jenkins into the center role? So they still have to figure out how the puzzle is going to all fit together. And of course, the big elephant in the room is, will Joel Bitonio come back to this offensive line?
Do you think that is still a possibility? I know you've written you've written on that and written a couple of articles. Take us through kind of where we are with Joel Bitonio.
Well, some people think that he may have already made up his mind, but he's not ready to announce his decision yet. The longer it goes, in my mind, it seems to me like he might not be coming back. And I remember back when Joe Thomas was retiring, he did something similar where we just didn't hear anything from him for the longest time. And he was just really taking his time and deciding on this very important decision for his career. So I wonder if he's not ripping a page out of the Joe Thomas playbook and just deciding that he's going to take his time and then make an announcement when he feels it's appropriate.
But so the contract, there's some dead cap money, but if he decides, hey, I still want to play, he can still come back with the Browns, right?
Yes, he can. They will absolutely keep the light on for him. They will carve out some money for him. They'll find a way to make that work. So it's Joel Bitonio. So they will find a way to bring him back into the fold if that's what he is up for.
One of the guys that you mentioned who's met with the media, Browns' new right tackle, Titus Howard. His thoughts on second-year quarterback Shedeur Sanders.
I met Shedeur when I came in last week. He's a great kid, and he has a lot of confidence. I like that. I like that in a quarterback. He definitely has the pedigree. He has all the talent in the world. I'm a big fan. He actually went to Jackson State, which was in the same division as Alabama State, where I went to college. So I've been following him ever since he was there. And I know that he, have all the tools to, be a really good quarterback in this league. And he's shown that he can be a great leader also. So I'm excited to work with him. I'm excited to, get to know him a little bit more. And, I'm looking forward to blocking for him. So I know Shedeur can be a great player in this league.
Okay, you wrote a couple of articles about the quarterbacks with Titus Howard. Take us through those as well. One of them was about Shedeur, the other about Deshaun. Take us through kind of the thought and what you took away from Howard talking about those two quarterbacks.
Well, I thought it was kind of interesting that he had such high praise for Shedeur, knowing that he's pretty close to Deshaun Watson. He blocked for Deshaun Watson in 2019 and 2020 in Houston. Deshaun made the Pro Bowl in each of those 2 years. Those guys also made the playoffs in 2019, and they went to the divisional round where they lost in the divisional round to the Chiefs, I believe it was. In 2020, Deshaun Watson threw for a NFL high 4,823 yards, had 33 touchdowns against only 7 interceptions. He was second in rating that year at 112.4, only to Aaron Rodgers. So those were Titus Howard's first 2 seasons in the NFL, and he spent them with a 3-time Pro Bowler in Deshaun Watson. So I figured that he would have high praise for Deshaun and that maybe he would be leaning towards helping Deshaun come back and win this job, and those guys could recreate some of the magic they had together in Houston. But he was also very complimentary of Shedeur. He met him last week. He's followed his career because Alabama State and Jackson State were in the same conference, and he's followed him in the NFL. And he really, really spoke very, very highly of him, what he brings to the table from a leadership standpoint, and what he can do as a quarterback. So he really thinks that Shedeur Sanders has a very high upside and will be a great football player in the NFL. So I thought that was kind of interesting from him, knowing that he has such a close relationship with Deshaun Watson. But he's coming into this open-minded and let the best man win.
So they traded for Titus Howard, who we just heard from, and Howard told us yesterday he's going to be the right tackle. Do you think that affects, and this is from one of your Haymary case, that affect 6 and 24, the first-round draft picks at all?
It might to a degree. You can go into the draft not being hard-pressed to take any one position. You can go in there and maybe you grab your left tackle at number 6 overall. Maybe you go in there and you can get another offensive lineman at number 24 or a wide receiver. So I don't think that it really is going to drastically alter their draft strategy, but it does ease you up a little bit to take whatever that you want. And that's the way that Andrew Berry likes to go into a draft. He doesn't want to have to be locked into taking anybody for need. He definitely wants to take the best available player at that moment. And sometimes best available and need, sometimes they match up. And that's probably what will happen here. But they can kind of do whatever they want with those picks.
So we heard earlier today that one of the Browns' former guards, Wyatt Teller, has a new team. He's agreed to a 2-year deal with the Houston Texans. Mike Garafolo reporting that. Mary Kay, not a surprise. The Browns didn't say that Wyatt Teller was done, but he has moved on and is signing with Houston.
Right, and Wyatt Teller told us that Wyatt Teller was done. He had already said farewell. He knew that he was gone. He knew that he was moving on to a new situation, and so this was just kind of confirmation of that. But good for him. He lands in a good spot, and once again, he's kind of trading places with one of the Browns' new linemen in Titus Howard. So those guys are just missing each other on the road. But anyway, so I enjoyed covering Wyatt here. He was a very good guard. He served a wonderful purpose. He was part of the heyday of that line that included Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, Joel Bitonio. I mean, it was a really, really good offensive line, and hopefully the new batch of guys coming in here will be able to live up to that.
So the Browns lose Devin Bush. Probably played his way out of what they wanted to pay that situation, and good for him. You wrote an article that him leaving has a little bit of a silver lining, though. Take us through that article and kind of the thought there.
Yeah, the thinking there is, even though I know that they were very disappointed to lose Devin Bush and that he was a high priority for them in free agency, the fact that they were able to land Quincy Williams, that's the silver lining, because Brown's new defensive coordinator, Mike Rutenberg, he gets one of his guys. And it just takes me all the way back to Bill Belichick when he brought in Pepper Johnson and Carl Banks. Sometimes you like to have your enforcers. You like to have your guys that can set the tone for you on your defense. They can come in and show the Rutenberg way, or he can come in and show the Rutenberg way. He can get the young guys up to speed in this scheme a little bit and the nuances of this scheme. And I just think it probably is maybe in the long run going to be better for Mike Rutenberg to have a guy like that on his defense.
The other thing is Quincy Williams, when he met with the media, said his best years were under Mike Rutenberg. The two have a really close tie, as you kind of alluded to. So you got a guy who believes the defensive coordinator he's going to play for is the reason he kind of unlocked his potential.
Oh, yes, and he feels he will be rejuvenated, not only with the new team, but under Mike Rutenberg, and having the opportunity once again to play to his strengths. He's got a ton of speed. He likes to play sideline to sideline. He didn't feel like he had an opportunity to do that last year under Steve Wilkes with the Jets, and so now he feels he's back with a coach who knows exactly what he's all about and how to bring out the best in him, and he can't wait to just put it all out there again.
We also, since last time we talked, you got to meet with all of the coordinators. What were kind of your impressions, your takeaways from all of the new coordinators that the Browns have under Todd Monken?
Well, first of all, Mike Rutenberg, I was ready to run right through a wall for him. He really brought it. He brought the energy. He brought the juice to his press conference. And you know that he's going to be just like that on the field, in the meeting rooms, and just around the Browns facility and on game day. He's just going to be very dynamic. I know that he wants to run the very same kind of attack-minded defense. It's going to be all about the front again. And then he will bring his own special brand of coverage in the back end. There will be some nuances there. He'll put his stamp on that. And he just seems like somebody that can help bring together a defense and a staff that is probably still reeling a little bit from the loss of Jim Schwartz.
And you know, the new offensive coordinator also sound like he sounded like an offensive line guy. The takeaway I had is this guy wants line play above. That's where he thought it's, which isn't a surprise since he was a center.
Right, he was a center, and he also comes from the run game background. So he's going to do everything that he can, I'm sure, to help make sure that the running game is robust and that it complements the passing game and that it's the kind of run game that Quinshon Judkins is going to love. Dylan Sampson is going to love it. And these guys are really going to do everything that they can. So while he kind of massages and babysits the run game, then you've got Todd Monken, who will focus more on the passing game and getting that up and running and implemented. And but yeah, I mean, Travis Schweitzer, it looks like Switzer, but it's Travis Schweitzer, and my computer always autocorrects it to Switzerland. But he, you know, I really enjoyed meeting him and talking to him. And, you know, he's ready to put his stamp and his mark on this football team, too. So these guys all have something to prove. And I think that's important because you're going to get the best out of them. Same thing with Byron Storer, the new special teams coordinator. I mean, they really need to upgrade and bolster teams. It has to be an asset to this football team, no longer a liability. And he's determined to do that.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
My name's Brian Johnson. I'm from Worcester, Ohio. I got a question about Deshaun. I know he wasn't good for us or haven't played for us in the last couple of years, but why not try him in Todd Monken's system? Maybe he just didn't work in Stefanski's system. And I like to pick up Quincy Williams, linebacker, alongside of Carson Schlesinger. I like that pickup. And the Browns did a good job revamping the offensive line. All right. Thank you, guys. Go Browns. Boo, boo.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Mary Kay, it's going to be interesting. The Browns are not in a position to not look at any quarterback that's on the roster. That's just kind of where they're at. They've got to look at Deshaun Watson. They got to look at Shedeur Sanders. They're going to look at Dylan Gabriel.
Well, I really do think that right now it's a two-man race between Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders. And it seems like Shedeur is already starting to develop a little bit of a rapport with Todd Monken. They've met each other a couple of different times. He sent him the horse head, which of course was very interesting. But you certainly cannot overlook Deshaun Watson. When he practiced for 3 weeks in December, he looked really good. I got great reports of him and what he looked like in those 3 weeks. And, you know, when you look at the fact that he obviously was once elite, he was a 3-time Pro Bowler. If they can tap back into that, that's what they would really like to do. So it's definitely something to be on the lookout for. And I think that Todd Monken, because he has so much experience with dual threat quarterbacks, especially most recently Lamar Jackson, that he should be able to bring out the best in Deshaun Watson. I sort of feel like if somebody can do it, Todd Monken can.
All right, next couple questions related to quarterback from your insider piece. Were the Browns in on Malik Willis?
Well, he was on the radar. There's no question about that. He was on the radar, and I wrote that at the combine. So he was somebody that they were going to look at, but he was never really a viable option because of the fact that his agent also represents Deshaun. And I just don't think that his agent really wanted those two guys pitted against each other. This is Deshaun's best opportunity to make a comeback, make something of his career, and continue on after this. And he's not going to be able to do that if he doesn't get a chance to play, or probably isn't going to get much of a chance if he doesn't get a chance to play here. So I think he kind of wanted to keep those two things separate, and therefore I don't think that it was a strong possibility that Malik Willis was ever going to end up here. However, they have liked him. I have written this, I have reported this. The Browns would have drafted Malik Willis had they not made the trade for Deshaun Watson in 2022. So sometimes when Andrew likes a guy like that once, he doesn't let up until he lands him, or at least he keeps an eye on him over the years, and that's what he has done with Malik Willis. But it just wasn't the right time or the right place right now, based in part on the agent that they both share.
What about Anthony Richardson? That's a name you hear connected to the Browns by some in trades. Do you see that being a possibility?
No, the Browns are not going to be trading for Anthony Richardson. I know that's been a big, huge rumor, and he is available. The Colts have made him available in a trade, but he is not somebody that the Browns are seriously looking at right now, and I don't really expect that to happen.
What about the draft? Do you see them taking a quarterback in the draft this year?
I think it's possible. I think there are a lot of intriguing guys in this draft that they could get if they don't go with someone in the first round, and I don't know if I really see that happening. But if they don't do that, they can always get someone in a later round that they can bring in as a developmental project. And in that scenario, they would probably think about then trading Dillon Gabriel. So this is something to watch as the next month and a half goes on. And, we'll see if they find somebody out there that they like better than what they have in the room right now. Now, I don't necessarily see one of these rookies coming in and overtaking Shedeur Sanders right now. I think they're pretty excited about what Shedeur brings to the table. But certainly they could bring in a guy that could serve as, challenge for that backup role or their third QB role.
This one, again, one of your Hey Mary case. Is there a chance you think that Dillon Gabriel gets another look at quarterback?
Well, I think that, anybody that's on the roster has an opportunity to compete. So he's going to come in here and he's going to have a chance to put his best foot forward and show what he can do. But I don't really think he's in the top two right now. I don't really think he's part of the, hey, we think he has a bona fide chance to be the starter on opening day. I don't think he's that guy right now. But he does have an opportunity to maybe put some things on film for another team, or show the Browns that after this year, when Deshaun might be gone, that maybe he can come back in here and continue to compete for the job or be the backup quarterback. So we'll see. I do think that we just haven't heard the last of the Dillon Gabriel story just yet.
Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me, the Ohio Lottery. Put a little flag in your day, put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Mary Kay Cabot, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi there, this is Tom Myers calling from Maryville, Tennessee. Todd Monken had a big runner with the Ravens, Derrick Henry, and he's not what he used to be. What I wanted to see is whether or not the Browns might take a lot of pressure off Shedeur Sanders if he is a quarterback by using Jeremiah Love as a fullback. Jeremiah Love could pick up yardage for Todd Monken, and Shedeur would look a lot better. Just my opinion. Thank you for being there and taking my call. Bye now.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Mary Kay, Jeremiah Love's going to go pretty early in the draft, but they have Quinshon Judkins who can function in a similar role.
Well, one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting, and I put this in my insider for Sunday, and that was the fact that they were in on it for Patrick Ricard, the big bruising fullback from the Ravens. So I thought that was kind of interesting that they thought maybe they needed a guy like that. So that leads me to believe that they will probably be looking for one of those guys in the draft, in free agency as they move forward, because they are going to need more blocking help. Now, you can scheme it up differently. You can use KT Leviston as a jumbo type blocker and things like that. But the fact that they were going after Ricard makes me think that, you know, we haven't seen the last of what's going to be happening with the Browns' offensive backfield just yet.
What are your thoughts about Sanders? Raheem Sanders seems to be a forgotten guy. When he carried the ball, he did okay. Yeah, you know, that was the guy they got waivers from the Chargers, and they put him on the 53-man, and he kind of bounced back and forth during the season.
Yeah, I think that he's somebody that they're going to probably need, especially with Quinshon coming off the injury. You don't want to put too much on him throughout the offseason program, mini camp, maybe even training camp. So I think Sanders is somebody that is going to come in handy for them, really have a chance to show what he can do, and maybe get some reps in the early going.
Tyvis Powell, again, former defensive back in the NFL, with a thought on a move that he'd like to see the Browns still make this offseason.
I think everybody wants to see the explosiveness on the outside, something at the wide receiver position. Obviously, a lot of people think that we're going to do that in the draft, whether that be at 6 or 24, and you obviously want them to do that left tackle thing. So it seems to me that they're definitely going to use one of those picks on the offensive tackle.
Okay, I think we've talked for a couple of years. Another playmaking wide receiver would help the offense a lot.
I think so. I would be all for doing that. I wouldn't even care if they went ahead and took Carnell Tate at number 6 overall. If you think that he can be that game-changing receiver. Will the Browns do that? I'm not really sure. I'm sure he's probably one of the guys that are under serious consideration there. But I would certainly do it. I think wide receiver is a premium position and can change the fortunes of a franchise. So I would be all for doing something like that, or taking one somewhere else in the first round. It's a pretty good draft for wide receivers. They should be able to find one somewhere. Now, Andrew might want to wait and get one a little bit later and not want to spend one of his highest picks on one. We'll have to see how that goes. But I think it's worth it. I really do. I think it's worth it. And I think if you're trying to help out your quarterback, that's one of the best ways to do it.
So let's take a look at under Andrew Berry, where wide receivers in the draft have gone. So, and you look at it, Isaiah Bond, a young guy they signed as a free agent after the draft, had some flashes last year. Jamari Thrash was the 5th-round pick. Cedric Tillman, who has been banged up and injured, 3rd-round pick. David Bell, injured, 3rd-round pick. Michael Woods was a 6th-round pick. Anthony Schwartz, 3rd-round pick that didn't work out, and Donovan Peoples-Jones, 6th-round pick who had some success. I guess the point when we look at this, Mary Kay, is they haven't invested a lot of premium draft capital in the wide receiver position. Do you think that's by design?
Well, I think part of it has to do with the fact that they were without 3 first-round picks from 2022 through 2024. So when you don't have the first-round picks, it's very difficult to spend even your next highest pick on a wide receiver. And then in some years, they didn't even have a 2nd-round pick. So I just don't think that they've had the draft capital to do it. And Andrew has made up for that by trading for wide receivers. That's one of the ways that he really tried to compensate for not having those draft picks. So he got Amari Cooper in a trade. He got Elijah Moore in a trade. He was able to land Isaiah Bond, who would have maybe gone as high as the 2nd round of the draft, by signing him as a free agent. So he's made up for it in other ways. But I do think that it might be time to make that investment of a high draft pick in a receiver.
Yep, that's exactly where I was going to. One of the things Andrew Berry has done pretty well relative to the wide receiver position is trades. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy. Along those lines, a trade was made today. Broncos are acquiring Jalen Waddle, wide receiver from the Dolphins. Denver gets Waddle in the Dolphins' 4th-round pick. That's 11th in that 4th round. Miami gets the Broncos' 1st-round pick, 30th overall, and their late 3rd and 4th round picks in this year's draft. So a high price to get Jalen Waddle for the Broncos.
It is a high price, but I think that shows you the value of a really, really good receiver. And Sean Payton knows what he's doing in that regard. He knows how important that is and is willing to spend the draft capital on that. Because a lot of times, if you have an established wide receiver, you're better off taking that guy than taking your chances on a draft pick, because the draft pick might not work out. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to spend a 1st-round pick on a proven commodity like that.
So this one, again, from one of your Haymaker cases, it's an interesting question. Do you think the Browns should bypass a potential elite difference maker at 6, regardless of the position, trade back and get additional draft capital?
Well, I think it's tempting. It's very, very tempting. And if you can pick up an extra 1st-round pick next year when the quarterback class is going to be so good, I would do that. I would want to be poised and ready to take a quarterback in next year's draft if you can do it. So many of the good ones should be coming out next year, and you should be able to get your hands on one, especially if you have a couple of 1st-round picks and you can package those together and move on up. So I probably would be doing that.
So when you look at what are some of the things that might not be obvious or as obvious to the average fan that Andrew Berry has to consider when looking at 6 and 24? Some of the nuances to what this pick would entail for the Browns.
Well, once again, I think if you have the opportunity at number 6 to move back and be poised to take a quarterback next year, I think you have to be ready to do that. If you look at what happened with the trade that he made in 2025, it was just dynamite. He knocked it out of the park on that trade, and they still haven't even used the number 24 overall pick from that trade yet. They got Quinshawn, and they got Dillon, and they got Mason. So I just think it was a hands-down victory for the Browns. And if you can do that again, then go ahead and do it. But you can move up from number 24. You can somehow package those. And it's just very advantageous for those guys to have those 2 1st-round picks, that they can move them around or use them however they need to.
All right, so March 17th, what's your gut feeling? Do the Browns take a wide receiver at 6? Do they take a defensive tackle? Do they take another position? Or do you think they find a way to trade back and get more of that draft capital? And again, we're at March 17th. They don't have to do this for another month plus.
I would say that they would find a way to trade back and add more capital. That's what they're in right now, is that rebuilding mode. And if they can parlay that number 6 into some extra picks, I think they would probably like to do that if they didn't have to go back too far, because you can probably still find a really, really good player, even if you move back 6, 7, 8 spots or whatever the case may be. So I think they'll look to do that.
Before I let you go, when we heard from Todd Monken at the Combine, he talked a lot about relationships. He can find out information about guys at Alabama, guys at Georgia, by picking up the phone and getting information that nobody else can, because he worked for Kirby Smart. That guy's going to tell him pretty much the truth, straight up. Is that something that's incredibly valuable, I think, and is that something to kind of keep in mind as you see how the draft unfolds?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. And there obviously are some key Georgia guys that he will be able to bend the ear of Kirby Smart on coming out in this draft. And that will be extremely, extremely beneficial. But again, it's not just him. He's got guys all over the college landscape, and he will definitely be able to rely on those relationships, and the Browns will take full advantage of that. And I think it will really come in handy April 23rd through 25th.
Mary Kay Cabot, thanks so much for the time on the inside. Appreciate it very much.
Sure, thanks for having me.
Mary Kay Cabot, make sure you check her out. Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Always some of the best Browns coverage you can find anywhere. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. We'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Browns beat reporter for 92.3 The Fan, Daryl Ryder. On if free agency has changed anything in terms of what the Browns are looking at in the draft.
I don't think it changed anything, Ken. I think it teed it up. And it kind of went the way I thought. They made it. Their splashes came via the trade and 2 signings, and by splash I mean spending a nice chunk of money on players. I have been saying from day one that I thought that offensive line, more specifically left tackle, as well as wide receiver, were the 2 positions they should or need to address in free agency, or I should say in the draft, in the first round with 6 and 24. And based on what Barry has done to this point, nothing has changed my thinking. And in fact, the one position it needs filled on the offensive line still, left tackle. That tells me that that's what they're going to be looking for in the first round of the draft. Not to say that they still can't sign somebody, but I really think that they're going to use one of the picks there. And then again, they didn't really they haven't addressed anything in the wide receiver room. That is a room that absolutely needs an infusion of talent. Again, still time to trade or sign somebody there, but I feel like they're going to bring in another young wide receiver.
Talking about Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. Jared, offensive line, there's a number of new guys. What do you think have been the best and the ones that kind of have you scratching your head relative to the acquisitions?
I think overall, Elgton Jenkins gives me a lot of confidence in what he will be able to do. And I think that's always, for me, important when you're talking about where are you investing some of your free agent dollars, right? We know free agency is a lot of fool's gold, right? Why someone becomes a free agent is really, really important. And so like Tyler Lindenbaum became a free agent because of just some of the CBA and some of the ways things work when you're a first-round offensive lineman. Okay, that means we can trust he's a top-level talent. Everyone else, you kind of got to understand what you're getting. And so with Elgton Jenkins, I know I'm getting a quality center, quality guard for at least 2 seasons, right? And so for me, that floor is really, really solid. It also didn't involve getting rid of any picks or a large contract extension. Titus Howard, a good right tackle. Not a great right tackle, a good right tackle. A 5th-round pick, contract extension. There's a little extra to that, but that is an okay expenditure at that point in time. Zion Johnson's really the wild card, right? He's someone who they're paying a decent chunk of money to. It's not a cheap Tevin Jenkins contract. But was he a victim of an offensive line that had a lot of injuries and a lot of struggles? And can the offensive line, can Todd Monken, George Warhop, can they kind of capitalize on his athletic ability? He's probably the one that I have the most questions about. So I don't know if I would say it's the worst, but it's definitely the one that we would be able to question the most, given the performance, given the contract given. That's just kind of how I would maybe rank them. And then Tevin Jenkins' contract is obviously one for a backup who could compete for a starting role, depending on how everything else works out. And on the offensive line, someone who could start at a cheap contract, we're always going to be a favor of that.
Yeah, offensive line is so hard, and people look at the PFF grades, and they have their place. I don't think they're the end-all, be-all. The other thing you got to remember is offensive line is so much. What are you asking them to do, and how can they relate? How do they play with the guy next to him? Those are the most important things about offensive line, and a lot of times a coach, as silly as that sounds, a coach can make a big difference on an offensive line.
Absolutely. Like we don't know how they're coached to do a certain technique, right? Do they want that to be a cut block? Do they want them to overset, but then the quarterback takes a 7-step drop instead of a 5-step drop. And all of a sudden, that looks like a sack on the right tackle, left tackle, guards, whatever it is. But the reality is he was told to overset, and the quarterback didn't get a right depth in his drop, or the running back didn't read what was expected kind of on the play. And so offensive line, there are just a few people, Brandon Thorne, for example, who, you look at and you go, they know what they're talking about. And even they would say, we don't know how they're taught, and we don't know the technique that they were asked to do on that play and how that was impacted by what the defense did and the rest of the offensive line.
You look at Joel Bitonio. What do you see with Bitonio? Is he going to retire? Is he moving on? Is he coming back? All three are still on the table.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place. I don't think Joel feels like he owes anything to the Browns organization. I think he thought that or felt that last year. If he did, that decision is going to be made a little bit earlier, just from a financial and a salary cap perspective, but also so that they had a lot of confidence in these decisions. Because at this point in time, yeah, Bitonio could come back. Zion Johnson can slide to right tackle. Jenkins is going to be the center. Right tackle, we got Titus Howard, and then left tackle, DeJuan Jones, or a draft pick. I just think it would be difficult to see at this point in time for him to take this long and to return to Cleveland. And so really, I think the question is whether or not, we just saw Wyatt Teller go to Houston. Does he want to join his friend there and see what they can do in Houston, for example? Does he want that one bite at the apple of a playoff level team with a quarterback that he believes in and a defense, again, using Houston as an example? I think it would just be really tough for him to do that. But I think at this point, retirement or going to a playoff contender makes the most sense.
Browns are going to get some additional salary cap money, and because of the insurance on Deshaun Watson. So we knew it was coming. We found out the number.
Yeah, and that number, we had seen reports from Seth Walder at ESPN and a variety of other places that number could be in the $40 million range, right? And so overall, they're adding about $18 million to their salary cap. That happens for insurance. And just to be honest, again, there's a lot of concern about Jimmy Haslam as an owner. And one thing he does is spend money. And so that insurance is literally because he has the money to spend and he's willing to spend it. So he has insured some contracts. When players get injured, they get not only cash back on that insurance policy, but that cash also becomes salary cap space. The rest of it is hard, or what it was expected to be reached incentives. So let's just say they thought David Njoku had I don't know this, but a 50 catch bonus for $1 million. Well, that would have been expected for him to get it, and maybe he did not get it. Well, that $1 million then comes back on the salary cap. So those are the kind of things that happen kind of every year, but more and more of these wealthy owners are deciding to insure their big contracts for injury, for this kind of reason, to give themselves more salary cap in the future.
All right, so Justin Fields traded from the Jets to the Chiefs. Do you think the Browns had any interest in that at all?
I put that question up just kind of community conversation because Justin Fields, Ohio State guy, athletic, all of that. I think Fields has proven who he is and what he is. And what that is an athletic quarterback who can make plays, but not someone you're going to bring in to compete. So not in a room like Cleveland is going to have this year. I don't think he would make a lot of sense. Where he does make sense in Kansas City, you get kind of a change up to Patrick Mahomes, and maybe you can get a few games of quality play while Mahomes is recovering from his ACL surgery. But overall, I don't think Fields would have had any interest, and he did some things with his contract that allowed the trade to go down. And I'm not sure the Browns at this point have shown much interest in bringing in any kind of quarterback competition or veteran to this kind of mix.
All right, so let's look a little bit at the draft. You keep hearing Ty Simpson, and you heard Ty Simpson talk about Todd Monken. What do you make of the Ty Simpson draft stock?
I think Ty Simpson is a unique player in that he is an older prospect, but he seems like a younger prospect in that we don't have a lot of information about him. And often that creates some buzz, that creates some excitement. I think it's going to be a really interesting test of where Todd Monken's power lies in the draft. He may love Ty Simpson, not really sure. I don't have any intel on that. I'm not sure what Mary Kay said in the last segment. But I will say that he does not fit an analytics model at all as a quarterback. The lack of starts and his age are really concerning from a data perspective. And then from a film perspective, we saw a quarterback that got worse as the season went on as teams got more tape on him, including the fact that he looked very uncomfortable in the pocket pretty much the last, second half of the season. And so you have a player who on film, there's some very significant concerns. This is a third round type player. And then you have someone who just doesn't fit the analytics mold with what he has, kind of his resume to say, he's not young, he doesn't have a lot of experience, he doesn't have either of those two things. So I think if you see Todd Monken with the Cleveland Browns, again, in the, with whether that's pick 24 or even high in the second round, I think that says a lot about Todd Monken, that Ty Simpson, I think I just said Todd Monken twice, Ty Simpson would be Todd Monken's pick, kind of like we saw with Dylan Gabriel last year was Kevin Stefanski's.
Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll turn our attention to the draft and talk a little wide receiver as well. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back.
You got so much to do, it's got you feeling blue. Put a little flag in your day, 'cause it's fun all over the state. So come on, great games wait for you and me. The Ohio lottery. Put a little flag in your day. Put a little flag in your day.
We continue talking Browns with Jared Mueller from Dawgs by Nature. One name that is associated with the Browns at 6, more and more after the combine, is left tackle out of Georgia, Monroe Freeling. CBS sports reporter Ryan Wilson, and if he thinks 6 is too high to take Freeling.
Yes.
Why?
He's a good player, but I mean, if we're looking at the offensive tackles we've been talking about since August, and he's played just as many games as those guys have. He's, to me, first round, second round guy. That doesn't mean he won't go in the top 10, but if we're talking about these offensive linemen, I would take Spencer Fano or Caleb Loma, the two Utah guys. I would take Caden Proctor ahead of him, and then I have him in the same range as the right tackle from Arizona State, Max Iheanacho, and then Blake Miller, the right tackle from Clemson. Now, Monroe plays on the left side. So the other thing is this. Is DeJuan Jones, are we done with that? I know he's battled injuries. I know he's going into the final year of his rookie deal, but it feels like to me there are bigger needs at guard where they have currently Tevin Jenkins and wide receiver. Like if we're sitting there at 6 and the conversation is Carnell Tate or Monroe Freeling, I'm running up there to get Carnell Tate. Monroe Freeling may not even play his first year. Carnell Tate would be the wide receiver 1 the second his name is announced.
Jared, it's kind of interesting. Freeling has what you can't teach. He's big and he's athletic. You can't teach those things. Now, he hadn't played a lot.
Yeah, and I think there's a difference between not playing a lot as a quarterback and an offensive tackle, right? Like, those are just significantly different things. Overall, Freeling has seen a huge rise up the draft boards, and I can tell you that the Browns tried to sign Rasheed Walker to a 2-year contract for more money than he actually ended up getting at left tackle. The agents moved ahead waiting for more, thought they'd get more. And the Browns moved ahead with some of their decisions with both Jenkins's, Johnson, all of that kind of stuff. And so it's very possible the Browns see Freeling as a developmental player that doesn't play in the first year. And I think anybody breaking down the Browns roster right now understands that this is not a team that's going to take a New England Patriots type jump unless something shocking happens. And so overall, talk about best player available, need, those kind of things. Andrew Berry talked about, best value long-term. Offensive tackles, there are a few of them in this draft. Freeling probably has the highest upside. Caden Proctor might be in that group as well, just based on size and experience, those kind of things. Whereas when you look at the wide receiver group, there are some very, very good players. We're just not, most people aren't sure that Carnell Tate or, whether it's Makai Lemon or any of the other players that we might talk about, as well as Tyson, are really that top level wide receiver. And so that's where we start talking about, whether it's best value, best player, trade down, like Mary Kay was talking about at the end of the last segment. Freeling fits if the Browns are patient and willing to allow him to learn, or as Ryan talked about, DeJuan Jones is that left tackle until Freeling is ready.
Yeah, the other thing that would be interesting to see, a young guy like Freeling with George Warhop, George Warhop might look at him and say, man, he's big, he can move his feet. I can teach him what to do from there. All right, let's take a look at this. So we asked a question about Monroe Freeling. Obviously, ESPN draft analyst Mel Kiper Jr. doesn't think 6 is too high for Monroe Freeling. He has his latest mock draft has the Browns taking Freeling at 6. With Carnell Tate on the board, Tate went 8 in his mock draft to the Saints. Mayugo goes to the Dolphins. Jordan Tyson to the Rams. Spencer Fano to the Ravens. Ty Simpson to the Jets. And then the Browns get Mekhi Lemon. I got to believe if the Browns come out of this first round with Monroe Freeling and Mekhi Lemon, Andrew Berry's smiling widely.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty solid draft overall. Lemon has some people believing he's trying to navigate himself to a very specific landing spot. I can't say that I know exactly where that is, but there are some people out there who say that they have an idea of why he acted the way he did in some of that. And so that's a little bit concerning. Jordan Tyson's injury actually has many believing he's going to be available or potentially available near the Browns' 24th pick. And so overall, Fano is a really solid player. I've been told most people say he's going to make 4 to 6 Pro Bowls. He just may never be an all-pro player. And so do you want somebody who's just going to be solid, really good at your left tackle position? If that's how you're seeing your team, he is a perfect fit at number 6. But overall, yeah, I think, Monroe Freeling, Mekhi Lemon, I think the combination of those two could really create a lot of excitement. And again, whether it's Lemon, Tate, Tyson, a number of receivers, we know it takes a quarterback to get them the ball.
Without question. So you look at it, and you look what the Browns have done on the offensive line and what they haven't done on their receiving core. What do you think Andrew Berry addresses 6 overall, and what are some of the determining factors in this? And again, I say it's on March 17th. This could change as we get closer to the draft. Just a gut feeling of what they do at 6.
I think my gut feeling and what I was told at the Combine is they believe the value at the top of the draft kind of ends around their pick or shortly after their pick. But they also believe there are a couple offensive tackles that they could have a few picks later. But at this point in time, how they see the value of the draft and the talent of the draft, which again is where that kind of best value combination comes together, is at the offensive tackle position. So I would expect one of those names to be the pick, whether that is at 6, a trade down with now the Dolphins who have an extra pick, or the Cowboys who have an extra first-round pick, or something of that nature. I would say right now he is looking at offensive tackle. I wouldn't oversell the idea of a wide receiver as the second pick. Not saying it's not possible, and definitely a highly likely thing. But again, I think value is going to continue to be an important conversation. And so whether that is a defensive end early, or if that is a slot corner like Pons out of Indiana, who they believe maybe could complete as that inside slot corner, which is a really specialized talent that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah did a little bit of, Grant Delpit did a little bit of. I just don't think they're as locked in on positions as many Browns fans might want them to be. I think we could see 2 wide receivers very easily. I could also see one, and it'd be the 39th pick there in the second round.
All right. We mentioned wide receiver a couple of times. Not an area the Browns have addressed in the draft. Here's a look at the total capital used to draft wide receivers in the NFL since 2020. Packers are 1, Chargers are 2, Panthers are 3. The Browns are 27. Behind them are the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Rams. It's important to note that the Bengals had Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. The Dolphins had Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. The Cowboys had CeeDee Lamb. Now, the Eagles have Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, and the Browns don't. So, they have not invested the draft capital. 3rd round is the highest they've taken a wide receiver. Is that by design because the fluctuation between hits and misses is so great with wide receivers? I can't wrap my head around why they haven't taken a wide receiver before the third round.
I mean, some of that looking at from 2022 as a unique kind of cutoff, right? And how many picks did they actually have before the first, or in the first or second round? And so there is a part of this that really is the unfortunate part of team building, where they might take a defensive tackle late in the first round this year instead of a wide receiver because they just see value as value. Again, when he talks long-term value. And so I think it is partially that. It's partially that generally wide receivers, the good ones are drafted by about pick 40. Now, you'll get some players like Puka Nacua later and those kind of things. But generally speaking, a good wide receiver is drafted pick 40 or before. And so they just haven't been in a position that high of a value. And then the third thing, just to always remember, like Tech McMillan last year, who was drafted by the Carolina Panthers. How good would he have looked and how much of a quote-unquote bust would he have been if the Browns would have drafted him instead of Mason Graham with the quarterback play that we had? And so it's always just important to put all of those pieces together. I think in the end, they just sometimes overvalue long-term value and undervalue impact for team over the next 2 to 3 years.
Jared Mueller, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jared.
Absolutely, brother. Always good to see you.
Jared Mueller, make sure you check him out. Great stuff. Dogs by Nature is where you can find him. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.